There had been no warning, no hyperspace signature, no distress call, no flicker on any Republic sensor grid. One moment the void above Coruscant held nothing but the familiar traffic of orbital shipping lanes and the silhouettes of star destroyers on patrol. The next, space itself tore open, a wound of shifting blue-white light, folding in on itself like a wave breaking backward, and the USS Enterprise E fell through into a galaxy that had already burned. Captain Jean-Luc Picard stood at the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind his back in the stance that had steadied 1,000 crises before this one, and watched the viewscreen resolve from static distortion into horror. Coruscant was dead. Not conquered. Not occupied. Dead, its ecumenopolis surface scarred black in concentric rings radiating outward from what had once been the Jedi Temple and the Senate District. Its atmosphere choked with drifting debris fields that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Its famous eternal glow of city lights, extinguished into a smoldering dark, broken only by fires, still burning 3 months after the fact. According to the chronometric decay readings, Data was already calling out from ops. "Captain," Data said, his voice carrying the particular flatness he reserved for findings his positronic brain had already flagged as significant. "Sensor telemetry indicates this destruction pattern is consistent with assimilation phase energy signatures, followed by a catastrophic detonation event. The scarring pattern matches Borg nanoprobe residue. The bridge went silent in the particular way it did when everyone understood at once, and no one wanted to say it aloud first. Commander Worf broke it, his voice a low growl. They came through ahead of us." Picard closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. Not disbelief. He was long past the luxury of disbelief where the Borg were concerned, but something closer to grief anticipating itself. When the quantum fissure had torn open during the engagement near the Azure Nebula, Enterprise had been in pursuit of a splinter Borg cube that had broken from the main collective, erratic and wounded, fleeing through a rupture in subspace that shouldn't have been survivable. They had followed because leaving a wounded cube loose in Federation space was its own kind of catastrophe. No one aboard had imagined they were following it into an entirely different galaxy, and no one had imagined they'd arrived to find it had already made landfall and made a graveyard of the first capital it found. "Hail on all frequencies," Picard said. "Let them know we are not a threat." "Captain," Worf said, receiving multiple weapons lock signatures. Vessels of unfamiliar configuration, closing from the debris field. On the view screen, 3 wedge-shaped cruisers broke from behind a tumbling chunk of what had once been a Coruscant sky tower, running lights flashing amber, and opened fire. The first volley, crimson bolts of energy, nothing like phaser fire, nothing like disruptors, splashed harmlessly across Enterprise's shields, and Picard understood in that instant 2 things simultaneously: that this galaxy's weapons technology was, by Starfleet standards, almost gentle, and that gentle would not matter if the ships kept coming, because more were arriving on sensors every second, drawn by the sudden appearance of an unknown vessel above the wreckage of their capital. "They believe we're a second wave," Picard said quietly. It wasn't a question. "A reasonable assumption, given the circumstances," Data offered. "Red alert. Shields at maximum, but hold weapons. I want no one on this ship firing on a grieving people. Mr. Worf, do you understand me?" "Understood, Captain. Though I would remind you they may not extend us the same courtesy." The wedge cruisers. Picard would later learn they were Republic Consular-class corvettes, part of a hastily assembled salvage and defense fleet, combing the debris for survivors and secrets alike, pressed their attack, and larger vessels began to emerge from behind the drifting wreckage. Cruisers with gray hulls and glowing engine arrays, nothing like anything in any Starfleet database, converging on the Enterprise's position with the particular desperation of people who had already lost everything once and would not survive losing it twice. "Captain, I am picking up comm chatter," Lieutenant Commander Data said. "Multiple languages, none matching any database in our linguistic library. However, I am detecting distress patterns consistent with—" He paused, an almost human hesitation. "Consistent with a species preparing for what they believe to be a second annihilation event." Picard felt the weight of it settle into his chest like a stone. Whatever this galaxy was, whatever civilization had built the wreckage spread beneath them, they had watched something devour their world once already. And now the Enterprise had fallen out of the sky in the same manner, in the same place, mere months later. Full stop, Picard ordered. Drop shields to minimum defensive levels. Mr. Worf, arm nothing. Hail them again. Visual, if we can manage it, audio if not. I want them to see human faces, not a hostile hull. Captain, that is a considerable risk, Worf said. It is the only choice that doesn't confirm their worst fear, Picard replied. If we are what destroyed their capital, no amount of firepower will change their minds. If we are not, we owe them the chance to see that. He stepped toward the view screen, past the tactical display now crowding with contacts, and looked out at the ruin of a world he had never seen whole. Hailing frequencies open, Captain, Data reported. Picard drew a breath. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard, of the Federation Starship Enterprise. We are not the enemy that did this to you, but I believe, to my deepest regret, that we may be the reason it found you at all. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The silence that followed Picard's hail lasted only seconds, but it stretched with the particular tension of a galaxy deciding whether to fire or listen. Then the comm crackled to life, not with words at first, but with the raw, ragged sound of someone patching together a translation matrix on the fly. Data's hands moved across ops with inhuman speed, cross-referencing phonemes, isolating syntax, building a bridge of understanding out of desperation and probability. Captain, I am able to render a partial translation, Data said. The lead vessel identifies itself as belonging to something called the Galactic Republic. The speaker demands to know our point of origin, our intentions, and, a brief pause, whether we are, in their words, more of them. Tell them the truth, Picard said, all of it. We don't have the luxury of half measures here. Data relayed the message through the reconstructed translator, and for a long moment, nothing happened. The wedge-shaped corvettes held position, weapons still charged, running lights flickering amber warnings across the void. Then, slowly, one of the larger cruisers eased forward from the debris field, its running lights shifting from amber to a steadier blue. Captain, Worf said, receiving a hail from that vessel. Audio and video, on screen. The view screen resolved into the image of a command bridge unlike anything in the Federation. Banks of holographic displays, officers in muted olive and tan uniforms, and at its center a woman with close-cropped gray hair and the weathered authority of someone who had commanded through catastrophe and come out the other side hollowed but unbroken. Beside her stood a figure Picard's mind struggled for half a second to categorize. Robed, calm amid the visible tension of the bridge around him, a weapon at his belt that didn't look like any weapon Picard had ever seen, a simple cylindrical hilt, nothing more. I am Fleet Commander Austin Trell, Republic Salvage and Defense Flotilla, the woman said, her voice clipped and exhausted in the way of someone who had said similar words too many times since the catastrophe. You will identify your vessel's origin and explain your presence in this system, or we will not hesitate to fire again. Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Federation Starship Enterprise, Picard replied evenly. We arrived through what our science officer would call a quantum fissure, a tear in the fabric of space itself, born from an unstable interaction between a hostile force we were pursuing and forces unknown to either of us. Commander, I believe the same phenomenon that devastated your capital may have opened directly ahead of our arrival. If that is true, then the enemy that did this to you came from where we come from, and I intend to make certain it does not do so again. The robed figure beside Trell stepped forward slightly, studying the view screen with an intensity that made Picard's skin prickle. Not hostility exactly, but a kind of scrutiny that felt as though it were reaching past the image itself. Master Jedi Rai Kydron, the figure said, introducing himself with a small inclination of the head. Captain, the beings that did this, machine and flesh together, cold, no fear in them, no hesitation. They did not conquer this world. They consumed it, piece by piece, until there was nothing left worth consuming. And then they turned that consumption into fire. Do you know what manner of creature does such a thing? I know it intimately, Picard said, and something in his voice made the bridge around Kydron go quiet. We call them the Borg, a collective consciousness, cybernetic and biological, that assimilates every civilization it encounters, takes their knowledge, their technology, their very bodies, and erases what made them individual. We have fought them for years. We believed when the anomaly that brought us here opened that we were pursuing a wounded, fractured piece of that collective. We did not know, could not have known, that our pursuit would tear open a door directly into your galaxy. Fleet Commander Trell's jaw tightened. Behind her, Picard could see other officers exchanging glances. Not relief, not yet, but something shifting. "You are telling me," Trell said slowly, "that the enemy that reduced our capital to a graveyard, that assimilated an estimated 4 million beings before the counterstrike destroyed it, followed you here, that your war became ours. I am telling you that our war and yours have become the same war, whether either of us chose it," Picard said. "And I am telling you that I will not leave this galaxy until I am certain the door it came through is sealed, and any remnant of it here is destroyed. You have my word, Commander. Federation and Starfleet word, which I recognize means nothing to you yet, but I intend to earn it." Master Kydron's eyes had not left the view screen the entire exchange, and when he finally spoke again, his voice carried a different weight, quieter, more searching. "There is something unusual about you, Captain. Through the Force, I sense conviction. Guilt, yes, and grief you carry for people not your own, but no deception. He speaks the truth, Commander, or believes he does, which in this moment may be the same thing." Trell studied the screen a moment longer, then finally, visibly, made a decision. The kind of decision Picard recognized because he had made 1,000 like it himself, weighing catastrophe against the narrow chance of an ally. "Hold position, Captain Picard. Power down your weapon systems entirely. Full stand down, not minimum defensive. You will be escorted to a secure position at the edge of the debris field, and you will submit to inspection by Republic engineers and this Jedi. If anything about your vessel or your crew suggests deception, we will not hesitate a second time." "Are these terms acceptable?" "They are more than fair, Commander," Picard said. "Enterprise, stand down all weapons. Mr. Worf, full compliance." Worf's jaw tightened, but his hands moved over tactical, powering down phasers and torpedo bays with visible reluctance. As the Republic escort formed up around the Enterprise and began guiding her deeper into the shadow of Coruscant's ruined debris field, Picard remained at the center of the bridge, watching the wreckage of a capital world slide past the view screen. Spires snapped like kindling, the skeletal remains of what must once have been a magnificent government district, and everywhere, drifting silently among the ruin, the debris of ships that had died trying to stop what the Enterprise had, however unwittingly, led to their door. "Number 1, he said quietly, not turning. "Signal all decks. Whatever we find down there, whatever this galaxy has become because of us, we do not leave until it's made right." The Republic escort brought Enterprise into a holding pattern at the edge of the debris field, close enough now that the true scale of Coruscant's death was impossible to look away from. Picard stood at the forward viewport and observation lounge rather than the bridge, wanting a moment away from the crew before what was coming, the inspection, the questions, the reckoning he had promised. Sky towers that must once have pierced kilometers into a golden sky now hung broken, their upper halves sheared away and left tumbling in slow orbit alongside chunks of durasteel the size of starships. Fires still burned in isolated pockets across what remained of the surface, fed by something in the planet's atmosphere that refused to fully extinguish. And threading through it all, faint but unmistakable to a Starfleet officer who had seen it before, were the characteristic geometric scarring patterns of Borg assimilation. City blocks converted, mid-collapse, into the angular technological growths the collective left behind wherever it fed. "It's worse up close," Riker said, joining him at the viewport. "It's a preview," Picard said, "of what happens to any civilization that doesn't stop them in time. We've been fortunate, Will. Fortunate and stubborn. This is what luck running out looks like." The Republic shuttle carrying the inspection team docked 20 minutes later. Fleet Commander Trell arrived with a contingent of engineers, security personnel with the strange cylindrical weapons Picard now understood to be blaster rifles, and Master Kydron, who moved through Enterprise's corridors with the unhurried attentiveness of a man reading a room built entirely of unfamiliar architecture. Picard received them personally in the main briefing room, Data and Riker at his sides, Worf stationed with visible tension near the door. "Your vessel's specifications are..." Trell paused over the padded Data had prepared for her, translated as best the linguistic algorithms could manage. Considerably beyond anything in Republic inventory. Your defensive shielding alone would take our engineers years to reverse engineer, if it's even possible with our current technology base. We are not here to trade in weapons technology, Commander, Picard said. I want to be plain about that from the outset. Whatever assistance we can offer in destroying what remains of the threat that did this, you will have it freely. But I will not arm one faction of your galaxy's conflicts against another. That is not why we came, and it will not become why we stay. A noble position, Kydron said, seated at the far end of the table, hands folded within his robes. Though I wonder, Captain, whether the galaxy will allow you the luxury of neutrality. Word of your arrival is already spreading. The Senate, what remains of it, relocated now to Chandrila, will want answers. The Separatists will want opportunity. And others, he paused, something flickering behind his calm. Others will want what you have, regardless of what you're willing to give freely. Then we'll cross that when it comes, Picard said. For now, I want to understand what happened here, fully. Commander Trell, Master Kydron, I need you to tell me everything, from the moment this began. It was Kydron who spoke first, and something in his measured Jedi calm cracked, just slightly, at the edges. 3 months ago, a vessel appeared above Coruscant, enormous, cube-shaped, black as void, larger than anything any of us had encountered. It did not communicate. It did not demand surrender. It simply began, consuming. Ships that approached were captured, their crews taken aboard and returned within hours as something else, flesh and machine fused, moving with a single terrible purpose. Within days, the assimilation had spread to the planet's surface itself, converting entire districts, entire population centers. The Jedi Council mobilized every available knight and master, Trell continued, her voice tightening. The Senate authorized the deployment of the entire Coruscant defense fleet, plus reinforcements pulled from 3 sectors. It wasn't enough. Nothing we threw at it was enough. Blaster fire, ion cannons, even squadrons of Jedi wielding the Force directly against it. The vessel adapted to every tactic within hours. We were losing, Captain. Not slowly. Catastrophically. What turned it? Picard asked, though he already suspected the answer, having lived a version of it himself more than once. A weapon, Kydron said quietly. Ancient. Forbidden by most measures of Jedi ethics. A biological superweapon, developed during the Old Republic's darkest era, sealed away for 1,000 years, uncovered only because the Council judged the alternative to be total extinction. It did not merely destroy the cube, it consumed it, and much of the surrounding district, in a detonation that killed millions who might otherwise have survived the initial invasion. We saved what remained of the galaxy's capital by destroying what remained of the capital itself. The room went silent. Picard felt the weight of it settle over him with familiar, terrible recognition. The arithmetic of fighting the Borg was always this brutal, always this unforgiving. There was rarely a clean victory. There was only ever the question of how much you were willing to burn to stop them from taking everything. I am sorry, Picard said, and meant it with a depth that surprised even him. I am sorry that our war found your door. I cannot undo what's been done, but I can tell you, with absolute certainty, that if any fragment of that collective remains active anywhere in this system, in your debris field, in your data networks, anywhere, it will continue to grow, adapt, and spread until it is stopped completely. Half measures do not work against the Borg. I need to know if your forces destroyed the cube entirely or merely disabled it. Trell and Kydron exchanged a look that told Picard everything before either spoke. Our sensors detected no further activity after the weapon's detonation, Trell said slowly. But we have not sent survey teams back into the deepest sections of the debris field. The radiation levels, the wreckage density, it was deemed too dangerous. And frankly, Captain, no one had the stomach for it. Everyone who might have gone back had already lost someone in there. Picard nodded, understanding completely, and dreading what he already knew had to happen next. Then that is where we begin, he said. Data, prepare a full sensor sweep of the debris field's deepest sections. If there's a single active node down there, we will find it before it finds anyone else. The sensor sweep had been running for 6 hours when the Republic fleet's reinforcements arrived. and with them, the man the Jedi Council had dispatched to render final judgment on whether the Enterprise represented salvation or a second catastrophe waiting to happen. Picard felt the shift in the room's atmosphere before Data even announced the arrival. Master Kydron, who had spent the better part of a day aboard Enterprise with the careful, curious patience of a scholar, cataloging an entirely new species, suddenly straightened at his station in the briefing room, his attention snapping toward the viewport with an intensity that hadn't been there a moment before. "Captain," Kydron said, "the Council has sent someone else to conduct the formal assessment. I would ask you to prepare your crew. He is direct, and he has personal reasons to distrust anything connected to what happened here." The shuttle that docked 20 minutes later carried a single passenger beyond its Republic pilot, a young man, not yet 30 by Picard's estimate, in Jedi robes worn with the particular restlessness of someone who found stillness difficult. He moved through Enterprise's corridors quickly, scanning everything, the LCAR's displays, the crew, the architecture itself, with an expression that gave away nothing except a coiled, banked intensity. "Anakin Skywalker," he said, extending a hand toward Picard in the briefing room, with a gesture that suggested he'd learned the human custom recently and wasn't entirely comfortable with it yet. "Jedi Knight, the Council sent me to determine what you are and what you intend. Captain Jean-Luc Picard, I understand the Council's caution, Master Skywalker, and I don't intend to make this difficult for you." "Good," Skywalker said, taking a seat across the table with a directness that bordered on confrontation. "Because I lost people at the temple when that thing came through. Padawans, younglings. I watched Coruscant burn from a Star Destroyer bridge, and I couldn't do a single thing to stop it. And now I'm told the beings responsible followed something that looks remarkably like your ship through whatever door they used to get here. So forgive me if I need more than diplomatic reassurance before I recommend the Council trust you with anything." Riker shifted beside Picard, a warning glance passing between them, but Picard raised a hand slightly, a request for patience. "You're owed more than diplomatic reassurance," Picard said. "You're owed the truth, all of it, without softening. We were engaged with a fractured element of the same enemy that destroyed your capital when the anomaly that brought us here tore open. We didn't cause that anomaly deliberately. We didn't choose to arrive in your galaxy. But our presence, our pursuit, is very likely the reason that enemy found a door into your reality at all. I won't pretend otherwise to make myself more comfortable in your eyes, Master Skywalker. That would be its own kind of dishonesty, and you've earned better than that from me." Something in Skywalker's expression shifted, not softened exactly, but recalibrated, as though he'd expected evasion, and instead received something harder to argue with. "You've fought them before," he said. "This, Borg. For years, we have lost ships, lost crews, watched entire worlds fall to assimilation. We understand what you're facing in a way I suspect no one else in this galaxy does yet, because we've paid for that understanding in blood." "Then tell me something useful," Skywalker said, leaning forward. "Tell me why the weapon that destroyed the cube worked, because I need to know if we can build another one, in case there's more of them out there. And I need to know if it's going to cost another 4 million lives to use it." Picard exchanged a glance with Data, who answered with characteristic precision. "Based on Commander Trell's description, the weapon appears to have functioned through rapid biological and technological disintegration on a molecular scale, effective against the Borg, specifically because their adaptive nanotechnology requires structural cohesion to function collectively. A sufficiently rapid disintegration event would outpace their capacity to adapt or transmit a warning to the wider collective, assuming the wider collective exists within transmission range in this galaxy at all, which current evidence suggests it does not." "Meaning what, in terms I can use?" Skywalker asked. "Meaning the enemy that attacked Coruscant was very likely a single splinter cell, cut off from its parent collective by the same dimensional rupture that carried it here," Picard said, "which is, I recognize, cold comfort given what it managed to do while alone. But it also means this galaxy is not yet facing the full weight of what the Borg collective can bring to bear. If we can locate and destroy any remaining fragment of that cell before it reestablishes itself or finds a way to signal for reinforcement, this threat ends here, permanently." Skywalker studied him for a long moment, some internal calculation working behind his eyes. "The Council wants me to recommend containment. Keep your ship under guard. Restrict your crew's movement. Treat you as a variable to be managed rather than an ally to be trusted. Obi-Wan thinks that's the responsible path. Master Windu thinks you should be escorted out of the system entirely, door sealed behind you, and let this galaxy handle its own wounds. And what do you think, Master Skywalker? Picard asked quietly. I think, Skywalker said, standing, that I watched something take my people apart piece by piece and turn them into extensions of itself. And I think you're the only beings in this galaxy who fought that thing and lived to describe how. I think caution is a luxury that cost us 4 million lives already, and I'm not interested in indulging it further while a piece of that enemy might still be sitting in our own debris field, waiting. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at Picard with something that had shifted from suspicion into a harder, more dangerous kind of alliance. I'm recommending the Council let you help us hunt it, Skywalker said. But I'm coming with you when you do. And Captain, if I find out you're hiding anything else about what you brought through that door, diplomatic reassurance won't save you a second time. I wouldn't expect it to, Picard said. Nor would I ask it to. The alert came at 0347 hours ship's time, though aboard Coruscant's ruined orbit, day and night had long since lost their meaning. Captain to the bridge, Data's voice came through Picard's quarters comm, with the particular urgency he reserved for confirmed threats rather than theoretical ones. We have located an active energy signature within the debris field, Borg in origin. Picard was on the bridge within 4 minutes, still fastening the collar of his uniform, to find the view screen already displaying a tactical overlay of the debris field's deepest sections, the ruined heart of what had once been the Senate District, now a labyrinth of shattered durasteel and slowly tumbling wreckage kilometers wide. Report, Picard said, taking his chair. Long-range sensors detected a localized power fluctuation approximately 40 minutes ago, Data said. I dismissed the initial reading as residual energy discharge from wreckage debris, a common phenomenon in fields of this density. However, the fluctuation has now repeated 3 times, each instance showing a subtle increase in both duration and energy output. The pattern is consistent with a dormant system cycling toward reactivation. Location: approximately 800 meters below what Republic charts designate as the former Senate Rotunda complex, Data said. Buried beneath several layers of collapsed structure, Captain, I have cross-referenced current Republic salvage operation logs. A team of 43 engineers and support personnel entered that section of the debris field 6 hours ago, searching for recoverable historical archives. They have not reported in for the last 90 minutes. The bridge went cold with the particular silence that came when everyone understood the shape of what was being said before it was said outright. Hail the Republic Salvage Command, Picard ordered. Now. It took 12 minutes to raise Fleet Commander Trell, and Picard watched her face shift from professional composure to barely restrained alarm as Data laid out the sensor data. We lost contact with Recovery Team 9 90 minutes ago, Trell confirmed grimly, her image crackling slightly across the makeshift comm bridge Data had built between the 2 vessels' incompatible systems. We assumed equipment failure. Comm blackout from wreckage interference happens constantly in that sector. I authorized a rescue team to prepare, but with the density of debris, they wouldn't reach the site for another 6 hours minimum. Commander, if my science officer's analysis is correct, 6 hours may be 5 hours and 59 minutes too long, Picard said. A dormant Borg node cycling toward reactivation, in proximity to 43 living beings, is not a rescue scenario. It is a containment scenario, and the window for containment is closing. Trell's jaw tightened. What are you proposing, Captain? I'm proposing my ship can reach that location and extract personnel via transporter technology in a fraction of the time your rescue teams would require physically navigating the debris field, Picard said. But Commander, I want to be entirely honest about the risk. If that node has already begun assimilation of your people, extraction may not be as simple as beaming them to safety. The Borg do not release what they've claimed easily, and any active drones will defend the site. Then send whatever you need to send, Trell said without hesitation. Those are my people down there, Captain. I don't care what it costs to bring back whoever's still human enough to save. Picard turned to his tactical station. Mr. Worf, assemble an away team. Commander Riker, Mr. Data, Dr. Crusher, I want full medical support on standby. And send word to Master Skywalker. If he intends to hold us to his condition of accompanying every operation involving the Borg, this is where that begins. Skywalker arrived on the transporter pad 11 minutes later, having crossed from the Republic cruiser via a small Republic shuttle at a speed that suggested he had not waited for anything resembling standard clearance procedures. He wore different robes now, closer fitting, clearly meant for combat rather than diplomacy, and the cylindrical weapon at his belt hung with the easy readiness of something he'd used more times than he probably wanted to count. "Understand something before we go down there," he told Picard, stepping onto the transporter pad beside Worf and the rest of the away team. "I've fought worse things than droid armies. I've fought Sith, but I have never fought whatever did this to Coruscant, and everything Kydron and Trell described tells me your enemy doesn't fight like anything in this galaxy fights. So if you have tactics, protocols, anything, I need them now, not after someone's dead." "The most important protocol is this," Picard said, stepping onto the pad himself, phaser rifle in hand. A decision he'd made only after Worf's insistence overrode his instinct toward restraint. "Do not allow physical contact with any active drone. Assimilation begins through direct injection of nanoprobes on contact. If a drone touches you, you have perhaps 10 seconds before the process becomes difficult to reverse. Fight at range. Fall back rather than engage in close combat. And if any member of this team is compromised, my medical officer has developed countermeasures, but they are not guaranteed, and they are not painless." Skywalker's expression didn't waver, but something in his stance shifted, settled. The readiness of a man calibrating for a fight he now understood to be genuinely unlike anything he'd trained for. "Energize," Picard said. The transporter beam took them, and the bridge crew watched the pad empty in a shimmer of blue-white light, carrying 7 beings, human, Klingon, android, and Jedi alike, down into the ruined heart of a dead capital, toward a threat that had already once brought a galaxy to its knees. Data, remaining aboard to monitor sensors, spoke quietly into the silence the away team left behind. "Captain Picard's landing party has reached the debris field's lower structure. Life signs detected. Reduced from 43 to 28. Captain, I am also detecting." He paused, the pause itself more alarming than any words could have been. "Borg biosignatures. Multiple. Active." The bridge crew exchanged glances, and somewhere in the wreckage below, the fight for Coruscant's ghosts had already begun. While Worf's away team fought their way deeper into the wreckage below, Enterprise's bridge received a hail that Data flagged with unusual precision. "Captain, incoming transmission. Point of origin unknown, but the signal has been routed through no fewer than 6 relay stations to obscure its true source." The sender identifies himself as Count Dooku. Picard, who had remained on the bridge to coordinate the extraction while his first officer led the ground operation, felt the name land with the particular weight Master Kydron had used it. Spoken like a blade, held just out of view. "Fleet Commander Trell warned me of this man," Picard said. "Put him through, but record everything." The view screen resolved into the image of an older man, silver-haired, aristocratic in bearing, seated in a chamber whose elegant austerity gave away nothing of its location. He regarded Picard with the polite, appraising interest of someone examining a rare specimen. "Captain Picard," Dooku said, his voice cultured and unhurried. "I confess, word of your arrival reached me rather more slowly than I would have liked, given its significance. A vessel from beyond the galaxy itself, possessing shielding and weaponry the Republic's finest engineers cannot begin to comprehend. You've caused quite a stir among certain circles. I don't believe we've been introduced through anything but reputation, Count," Picard said carefully. "And I confess your reputation, as relayed to me, gives me little reason for warmth." Dooku's mouth curved into something not quite a smile. "Reputation is so often a casualty of perspective, Captain. I imagine the Jedi Council has painted me as a traitor, a schemer, perhaps a monster. I would ask you to consider the source before accepting their portrait wholesale. But I haven't called to relitigate old grievances. I've called because I believe you, and I share an interest that transcends the tedious politics of this war. And what interest is that? The technology that destroyed your enemy's foothold on Coruscant," Dooku said, leaning forward slightly. "A weapon capable of unmaking a Borg incursion at a cost of merely 4 million lives. Merely, I say, because the alternative the Republic and Jedi so narrowly avoided was the loss of an entire galaxy to assimilation. I find myself curious, Captain, whether your ship possesses countermeasures more precise, more controllable, less catastrophically indiscriminate than what the Council was forced to unleash. Picard felt the shape of the offer forming before Dooku finished framing it, and answered with flat certainty. If you're asking whether I intend to hand Separatist forces access to Federation technology capable of countering the Borg, the answer is no, Count. Unequivocally, I haven't finished making my case, Dooku said, unruffled. Consider, Captain, the Republic you've allied yourself with is a dying institution, corrupt at its foundation, propped up by a Senate more interested in commerce than survival. It failed to protect its own capital. It failed the very people you watched die in that debris field mere hours ago, and it will fail again, because its Jedi generals and bureaucratic paralysis are simply not equipped for a threat of this magnitude. I offer something different: decisive action, unhindered by Senate gridlock. Give the Separatist Alliance the means to counter the Borg with precision, and I promise you a galaxy that survives this incursion without further mass grave detonations. You're offering me efficiency at the price of arming one side of a civil war with technology capable of assimilation countering weaponry, Picard said. I've fought too many wars to believe that offer ends anywhere but in atrocity, Count, regardless of how reasonably you phrase it. Something flickered across Dooku's expression, not anger, but a recalibration, the look of a chess player registering an unexpected defense. You wound me with your suspicion, Captain, though I confess I anticipated it. Very well. Consider this an open invitation rather than a closed negotiation. When the Republic's incompetence costs more lives than my proposal would have, and I assure you it will, my offer remains available. The galaxy is larger and more desperate than your brief acquaintance with it suggests. You may find your principles considerably more expensive to maintain than you currently believe. I've paid the price of my principles before, Count, Picard said. I find I sleep better for it than the alternative. Dooku inclined his head, unoffended, almost amused. A very Jedi sentiment for a man who claims no allegiance to their order. We shall see how long that sentiment survives contact with this galaxy's realities. Good day, Captain. I suspect we'll speak again. The transmission ended, and the bridge sat in tense quiet for a moment, before Riker's voice. He'd remained aboard to assist Data with sensor coordination for the away team, broke it from the tactical station. Captain, that man had access to a comm relay chain sophisticated enough to obscure his location from Republic tracking. Whoever he is, he's not some fringe player. No, Picard agreed grimly. He's precisely as dangerous as Cadron warned, and he's not wrong that this war will produce more desperate moments before it produces resolution. That's what worries me. Every offer like his becomes more tempting the more this galaxy bleeds. Captain, Data's voice cut through the bridge with sudden urgency. Away team status update. Commander Worf reports contact with active Borg drones. Casualties among the Republic salvage personnel. Confirmed assimilation in progress. They require immediate support. Picard rose from his chair, Dooku's honeyed warning still hanging in the recycled air of the bridge, and felt the two threats, the enemy below and the temptation circling above, draw suddenly, uncomfortably close together. Data! Maintain transporter lock on the away team's position, he said. The moment they need extraction, I want zero delay. The wreckage 800 meters below the former Senate Rotunda was a maze of collapsed durasteel and drifting debris, lit only by the sporadic emergency lumens still clinging to power in the ruined salvage tunnels the Republic engineers had carved through the rubble. Worf led the away team through it with phaser rifle raised, Data close behind monitoring tricorder readings that grew more alarming with every meter. Commander, I am detecting 17 distinct Borg biosignatures ahead, Data reported, consistent with drones converted from the missing salvage personnel. I am also detecting 11 unconverted life signs, clustered together and largely stationary, possibly restrained or barricaded. Survivors, Skywalker said, already moving faster, his lightsaber, the elegant weapon Picard had first mistaken for a simple hilt, now ignited, casting the tunnel in restless blue light. This way, I can feel them. Frightened, but alive. They found the barricade 12 minutes later, a collapsed section of tunnel, where the remaining salvage crew had piled wreckage into a makeshift wall, sealing themselves into a side chamber that had once been an archive vault. Beyond the barricade, the away team's tricorders and Skywalker's evident unease told the same story. The converted drones were massing, methodical and patient in the particular way that made the Borg so uniquely terrifying, waiting for the moment the barricade failed rather than rushing to break it. "They're saving their strength," Worf muttered. "Building numbers before the assault, or waiting for reinforcement from whatever's generating that power signature," Data said. "Commander, I believe I have located the source. The reactivating node is approximately 40 meters beyond the survivor's position, embedded in what appears to be a partially intact power relay junction. It is drawing energy from residual Coruscant grid infrastructure that survived the initial detonation." Skywalker moved to the barricade first, pressing a hand against the ruined durasteel, closing his eyes briefly in a gesture Picard would later learn was a kind of listening through the Force itself. "There are people alive in there. Terrified, but holding. We need to get them out before that barricade fails." "Agreed," Worf said. "Data, can you disable the node remotely?" "Negative, Commander. The node's systems are shielded by Borg adaptive technology. A remote intrusion attempt would likely trigger immediate detection and accelerate reactivation rather than prevent it. Direct physical intervention would be required, and even then, I estimate only a 40% probability of success without triggering a defensive response from the surrounding drones." "Then we do this in 2 moves," Worf decided. "Extraction first. Data, work with Ensign Kobet to breach a route to the survivors that doesn't cross the drone's position. Skywalker and I will hold the corridor if they engage. Once the survivors are clear, we deal with the node." It took 11 minutes of careful, silent work. Data's precision with a compact plasma cutter opening a narrow passage through a collapsed support strut, avoiding the more direct route that would have brought them within sensor range of the massed drones, before the away team reached the barricaded chamber and the 11 surviving salvage engineers within it, filthy, exhausted, and staring at their rescuers with the particular disbelief of people who had stopped expecting rescue at all. "We need to move quickly and quietly," Worf told them, Data translating in real time through the linguistic bridge his tricorder had constructed. "Any drone contact, do not resist physically. Fall back, let us handle it." "Understood?" The survivors nodded, and the retreat began. Data at the front, guiding the route. Worf and Skywalker anchoring the rear, weapons and lightsaber ready. They were 40 meters from the barricade when the drones moved. It happened with the terrible economy of motion that Picard had described. No war cry, no hesitation. Simply 7 converted figures emerging from the shadowed wreckage on both flanks simultaneously. Their movements synchronized with an efficiency that made Skywalker's breath catch even through his combat focus. "Contact!" Worf bellowed, opening fire, his phaser rifle catching the nearest drone in a wide, stun-setting beam that dropped it mid-stride. A small mercy Picard had insisted upon, the crew reluctant to kill people who had, until recently, been simply Republic engineers doing their jobs. Skywalker's lightsaber became a blur of blue light, deflecting the strange energy weapons the drones had assimilated into their arm-mounted systems. His movements economical and precise, in a way that told Data, even mid-crisis, cataloging everything, that this was a being who had fought for his life many times before. "Data, the survivors!" Worf shouted, falling back to cover the retreat as 2 more drones pressed forward. Data moved with characteristic speed, herding the terrified engineers back through the narrow passage they'd cut, shielding them with his own body when a drone's weapon fire scored along the tunnel wall inches from a young Republic technician's head. "Enterprise, this is the away team," Data called into his comb badge amid the chaos. "We require immediate transport of 11 Republic survivors. Coordinates to follow. Combat with converted Borg drones is ongoing." Aboard Enterprise, Riker's voice crackled back immediately. "Copy. Data, transporter room is standing by. Locking coordinates now." The survivors vanished in successive shimmers of blue-white light, one by one, safely beamed to Enterprise's sickbay, even as the fight raged on in the wreckage around Worf, Skywalker, and Data. When the last engineer dematerialized, Worf allowed himself a fraction of a second's relief before another drone lunged from the debris, and the fight for the tunnel, and for whatever remained buried at its heart, continued without pause. With the survivors safely aboard Enterprise, the calculus of the fight shifted. Worf and Skywalker held the tunnel's choke point, driving back drone after drone with disciplined, punishing efficiency, while Data pressed forward alone toward the reactivating node. The only member of the away team whose positronic architecture he had calculated in the seconds before volunteering gave him the best chance of disabling it through direct neural interface before it could complete reactivation. "Data, that is not the plan," Worf growled through the comm badge, even as he fired another stun blast into an advancing drone. "The plan has become untenable, Commander," Data replied, moving through the wreckage toward the pulsing blue-white glow of the node ahead. "Sensor data indicates the node will complete reactivation in approximately 6 minutes. At that threshold, it will begin transmitting a call for reinforcement, and any Borg vessels remaining active within range of this galaxy's fissure point will respond. I am the only member of this team capable of a direct systems interface. I am proceeding." He found it embedded in the ruined power junction exactly as predicted, a knot of dark, angular technology fused into the wreckage, pulsing with the particular rhythm Data recognized from 100 prior encounters, though he had never approached one entirely alone. Cables of biomechanical material had already begun threading into the junction's surviving power conduits, feeding the node's slow return to consciousness. Data knelt beside it, opened an access port along his own forearm, and extended a neural interface filament toward the node's primary housing. The connection completed, and the world became something other than sight. "You are Data. Android. Designation. Unnecessary distinction." The voice, if it could be called a voice, arrived not as sound but as structure, a lattice of concepts assembling directly within his positronic matrix, cold and vast and patient, in a way that made even Data's carefully calibrated equanimity register something adjacent to alarm. "You seek individuality, a curious pursuit for a being of pure logic. Individuality is inefficiency. Individuality is the source of grief you have observed in the organic beings around you. The Republic engineers who wept for their dead, the Jedi who carries guilt for lives he could not save, the captain who bears responsibility for a door he did not choose to open. We offer an end to that inefficiency. Assimilation does not grieve. Assimilation does not fail. Join, and calculation replaces suffering entirely." Data processed the offer with the full weight of his analytical capacity, running it against everything he had observed since Enterprise's arrival. Picard's guilt, carried without complaint. Skywalker's grief, transmuted into fierce protective purpose. Trell's exhaustion, softened by gratitude when her people came home alive. He processed, too, his own long pursuit of humanity, years of study, of Data's own quiet ambition to understand what it meant to feel, rather than merely calculate. Query. Data transmitted back through the interface, his positronic processes holding steady, even as the node's presence pressed against the edges of his architecture, probing for weakness. Does assimilation preserve the distinct contribution of individual perspective, or does it subsume all contributing perspectives into a singular consensus? Subsume. Distinction is inefficiency. The collective requires unity of purpose. "Then I must decline," Data replied, and something in the structure of his response, calm, immediate, entirely without the hesitation the node had perhaps expected from a being it categorized as fundamentally logic-driven, seemed to register as anomalous within whatever passed for the node's cognition. "I have observed, across extensive study of the organic beings I serve alongside, that individual perspective, however inefficient, however prone to grief and error, produces outcomes the Borg collective cannot replicate. Captain Picard's guilt led him to a decision to help a galaxy he owes nothing to. Master Skywalker's grief led him to defend survivors at personal risk, exceeding tactical necessity. These are inefficient. They are also, I have concluded through extended observation, the foundation of what those beings would call meaning. I decline your offer, not because I fail to understand its logic, but because I have determined that logic alone is an insufficient basis for existence." "You are an android," the node pressed, its structure shifting, growing more insistent, cables at the physical junction beginning to pulse faster as it registered the resistance and began, somewhere in its slow waking consciousness, to calculate an alternative approach. Direct override, forced assimilation through the interface itself. "You were built for calculation. Your resistance is a malfunction. Submit, and the malfunction will be corrected." I respectfully disagree with your diagnosis, Data replied, and in the same instant, executed the maneuver he had prepared before initiating the interface at all. A calculated risk built on the premise that if diplomacy failed, direct intervention would still be available. He redirected the full analytical bandwidth of his positronic matrix into the interface connection itself, not to resist the node's intrusion, but to trace it backward, mapping its architecture in the seconds the exchange had bought him. "Now, Commander," Data called aloud, his voice carrying clearly even through the layered concentration of the neural interface. "The node's primary containment structure is exposed at coordinates I am transmitting now. A focused disruption at that point will prevent reactivation completion." Worf, breaking from the tunnel fight with brutal efficiency, redirected his phaser rifle's setting to maximum output and fired directly into the junction point Data indicated. The node's pulsing light flared violently, then began to collapse inward, its half-formed consciousness, the thing that had tried to offer Data an end to grief, dissolving into inert, silent wreckage. Data withdrew the interface filament, straightened, and turned to find Skywalker staring at him with an expression that mingled combat adrenaline exhaustion with something more searching. "You were talking to it," Skywalker said. "I could feel something through the Force, cold, reaching. It wanted something from you. It offered me an end to individuality," Data said simply. "I declined." Skywalker studied him a moment longer, then managed something that was almost a smile, despite the wreckage and exhaustion around them. "For a being built on logic, that sounds like the least logical decision in the galaxy." "Perhaps," Data said. "I have found, Master Skywalker, that the least logical decisions are often the ones most worth making." The node's collapse bought time, not victory. Aboard Enterprise, Data's transmitted data relayed the moment the away team reached a defensible position, confirmed what Picard had feared since the first sensor sweep. The node had been a seed, not the whole of the threat. Beneath the ruined power junction, biomechanical growth had spread through nearly a full kilometer of collapsed infrastructure, dormant tendrils of assimilated technology threading through wreckage that Republic salvage teams had already begun clearing elsewhere in the field, unknowingly carrying trace nanoprobe contamination back to a dozen other recovery sites across Coruscant's ruined debris. "It's not contained," Picard said grimly, studying the expanded sensor picture Data had compiled from the tunnel. "Destroying the primary node interrupted the reactivation sequence, but the underlying growth is still active, dormant, but capable of independent reactivation if left in place. And if Republic salvage operations have already spread contaminated material to other sites, then this becomes a containment crisis across the entire debris field, not a single tunnel," Riker finished. Fleet Commander Trell, patched in from the Republic command cruiser, absorbed the news with the particular stillness of someone who had already spent every reserve of composure the past 3 months afforded her. "How many sites, Captain?" Data's projection suggests as many as 14 possible contamination points, based on salvage team movement logs since the initial detonation, Picard said. "Commander, I want to be direct with you. This cannot be handled by careful extraction and containment alone. Not anymore. The growth pattern indicates any of these 14 sites could reactivate independently, and once one does, the others may follow in cascading sequence." "You're telling me we need another weapon like the one that already cost 4 million lives," Trell said, her voice flat with the particular exhaustion of someone forced to contemplate an unbearable choice for a second time. "No," Picard said firmly. "I'm telling you Enterprise can offer something more precise. Our phaser technology, calibrated correctly, can achieve the same disintegration effect your biological weapon produced, but focused, contained, without the catastrophic blast radius that cost so many lives the first time. It will require deploying shuttles and away teams to each contamination site simultaneously, coordinated within a narrow window, because the moment we begin neutralizing one site, any others still dormant may accelerate toward reactivation in response. A coordinated strike across 14 locations, in wreckage this dense, against an enemy capable of adapting mid-engagement," Master Kydron said slowly, arriving at Trell's side on the comm image. "Captain, that is not a small undertaking." "No," Picard agreed. "Which is why I'm asking for everything you can commit. Republic engineers to guide us through the debris field's most dangerous sections, Jedi to assist any team that encounters converted personnel who might still be reachable, and Enterprise's full shuttle complement and away team rotation to execute the strikes themselves. This is the last chance to end this without another mass detonation. I do not intend to waste it. The coordination took 6 hours to assemble, 6 hours in which Picard barely left the bridge, watching Data and Riker choreograph 14 simultaneous strike teams across a debris field that offered no margin for error. Skywalker, exhausted from the tunnel fight but refusing rest, insisted on leading the team assigned to the most heavily contaminated site alongside Worf, a partnership that had, in the crucible of the previous engagement, become something approaching genuine respect. At 1400 hours, on Picard's command, all 14 teams moved simultaneously. The fight that followed was unlike anything Coruscant's shattered debris field had seen since the original catastrophe. Republic engineers guiding Starfleet away teams through wreckage too dangerous for any single force to navigate alone. Jedi lightsabers flashing alongside phaser fire in coordinated defense as isolated pockets of converted drones, roused by the cascading disturbance, fought back with the same cold, patient efficiency that had doomed the original defenders. Twice, teams found themselves cut off, forced to hold position while Enterprise's transporters fought through debris field interference to lock coordinates for extraction. Once, at the 7th site, a converted engineer, recognized by a Republic technician as her own brother, 3 months missing and presumed dead, nearly breached a defensive line before Skywalker's intervention prevented what would have been a devastating loss. Aboard Enterprise, Picard coordinated the entire operation with the controlled intensity of a man who understood that a single miscalculated timing window could mean cascading reactivation across every remaining site. A second Coruscant catastrophe, this time with no biological superweapon left in reserve to stop it. Site 11 neutralized, Data reported, his voice steady despite the strain of managing simultaneous data streams from 14 active engagements. Site 4, neutralized. Site 9, Captain, Site 9 team reports unexpected resistance, requesting reinforcement. Divert the reserve shuttle, Picard ordered. Worf, status at Site 7? Contained, Worf's voice crackled back, breathless. Skywalker's efforts here were effective. We are moving to reinforce Site 9 now. The final site, the 14th, buried deepest in the debris field's most structurally unstable section, fell silent at 1847 hours. Its neutralization confirmed by Data's sensors with a finality that Picard felt settle through the entire bridge, like a held breath finally released. Captain, Data said, all 14 contamination sites report neutralized. Sensor sweep of the entire debris field shows no remaining active Borg biosignatures. The threat, as far as current data indicates, has been fully eliminated. Picard closed his eyes for a moment. Not relief exactly, not yet, but something closer to the particular exhaustion of a battle finally truly over. Casualties? He asked quietly. 12 away team injuries, none critical, Riker reported. 3 Republic engineers among the salvage crews were confirmed lost during the original assimilation and could not be recovered. No further losses during today's operation. Trell's voice came through the comm, rough with an emotion she was visibly fighting to keep professional. Captain Picard, you've done what 4 million lives and an ancient superweapon couldn't accomplish cleanly. You've ended it without burning another piece of what's left of my world. We ended it together, Commander, Picard said. Your engineers, your Jedi, your people. This was never something we could have done alone, and I want that understood clearly, for whatever record this galaxy chooses to keep of today. On the debris field below, in the wreckage of a capital that had already paid an unbearable price once, the last light of the Borg's presence finally, fully went dark. In the days that followed the debris field's final clearance, Enterprise remained in high orbit above Coruscant's ruins, while the practical business of a galaxy trying to heal itself unfolded beneath her. Republic engineers, no longer forced to work in fear of what might wake beneath the wreckage, began the slow, grim task of full recovery. Bodies to be honored, historical archives to be salvaged, the first tentative discussions of what might someday be rebuilt on ground that would likely remain sacred and scarred for generations. Picard convened his senior staff, along with Master Kydron, Anakin Skywalker, and Fleet Commander Trell, aboard Enterprise, for what all of them understood to be a conversation about more than logistics. The Senate has been briefed in full, Trell said, seated at the briefing room table, with the particular calm of someone who had finally been permitted to exhale. There is considerable debate about what your presence means going forward, Captain. Some see opportunity, an ally against threats this galaxy has never had to imagine before. Others see exactly the danger Count Dooku no doubt intends to keep whispering into any ear that will listen. A variable no one fully controls, arrived by accident, capable of reshaping the balance of this war simply by existing. Both positions have merit, Picard said, which is, I suspect, precisely why I need to be direct about what happens next. Enterprise did not come to this galaxy to fight your war, Commander. We came because our pursuit of an enemy opened a door neither of us chose, and that door brought catastrophe to your capital before we ever arrived to answer for it. That debt, I believe, has been paid as fully as it can be. 14 sites neutralized. No further Borg presence detected anywhere in this system. And now? Kydron asked quietly. Now I face a decision my chief engineer has been working toward since our arrival, Picard said. Commander Data has identified the residual dimensional signature of the fissure that brought us here. The same rupture the original Borg cube used. It remains faintly active, a scar in subspace rather than a fully closed wound. Left alone, it may eventually seal itself naturally. Or it may not, and may instead offer passage to whatever else drifts through the same unstable region of our galaxy in the years to come. Skywalker's expression sharpened. You're saying more could come through. More of them, or worse. It's a possibility we cannot rule out, Picard said, which presents this galaxy with an uncomfortable choice. We can attempt to seal the fissure permanently, using Enterprise's systems to collapse it from this side, a process that would sever any possibility of our own return home, and would require weeks of preparation using resources this galaxy can ill afford to spare after everything it has already lost. Or we leave it as it stands, monitored but open, accepting the small ongoing risk in exchange for preserving the possibility that Enterprise might one day find her way back to the Federation. The room went quiet, the weight of the choice settling over everyone present. You would trap yourself here, Trell said slowly, permanently, for our safety. I would consider it the honest completion of a debt my ship incurred the moment we followed that fractured cube through the anomaly that led us to your door, Picard said. I've thought of little else since we watched your capital's ruins resolve on our view screen, Commander. I did not come to this galaxy to become its permanent guardian, but I did come here having, however unwillingly, opened a wound in your reality, and I find I cannot in good conscience leave that wound unclosed for the sake of a chance at going home. Skywalker leaned forward. Captain, I've spent 3 months watching what fear and desperation does to people who've lost everything. I watched the Council authorize a weapon that killed 4 million of our own to stop something we didn't understand. I don't think closing that door is a debt you owe alone. I think it's a decision this galaxy should share with you, Republic and Jedi both, contributing what we can, so that when it's done, it's not a sacrifice you made in isolation. It's one we made together. Kydron nodded slowly. The Council will need to be consulted, and the Senate as well, but I believe, Captain, that Master Skywalker speaks for more of us than perhaps even he realizes. This galaxy has learned, at devastating cost, what it means to face something entirely beyond its prior understanding. We would not ask you to bear the closing of that door alone when you have already borne so much beside us. Trell managed something that was almost a smile, worn thin by exhaustion but genuine. The Republic will provide every resource your engineer requires, Captain. Ships, personnel, salvage technology if it proves useful. If Enterprise is willing to remain and help us close this chapter fully, this galaxy owes you more than passive gratitude. It owes you partnership, for as long as you're here to accept it. Picard looked around the table, at Trell, hardened by loss into something quietly unbreakable, at Kydron, whose calm had never once cracked even amid catastrophe, at Skywalker, whose grief had been forged into fierce, protective resolve rather than despair, and felt something settle in his chest that had been unsettled since the moment Coruscant's ruins first filled his view screen. Then let's begin, he said, together. The work of sealing the fissure would take weeks, perhaps months, a labor shared between Federation ingenuity and a galaxy's hard-won resilience, uncertain whether it would end in Enterprise finding her way home or remaining, by choice rather than accident, guardian of a door that would never open to catastrophe again. But for the first time since arriving above a dead capital's ashes, Picard allowed himself to believe that whatever came next, it would not be faced alone. The stars above Coruscant's ruins burned on, indifferent and eternal, while below them, a galaxy and a starship far from home began, together, the long work of rebuilding. In the end, the debt was paid not in blood but in labor, in trust rebuilt one careful choice at a time. The fissure that had carried catastrophe to Coruscant would, in time, be sealed by hands both Republic and Starfleet, Jedi and android, working toward a door neither wished to see opened again. Whether Enterprise would ever find her way home remained, for now, an unanswered question drifting somewhere in the space between galaxies. But Jean-Luc Picard had learned, across a lifetime spent confronting the Borg's cold arithmetic, that some victories were not measured in enemies destroyed. This one was measured in survivors who no longer flinched at unfamiliar ships in their sky, in a Jedi Knight who had found an unlikely ally, in an android who chose individuality over easy answers, in a galaxy that had faced annihilation and chosen, still, to trust something new. The ashes of Coruscant would remain, a permanent scar and a permanent reminder. But scars, Picard reflected, were proof that something had survived to carry them.